All right. I think we did it. Anytime I pull something off technologically, man, I get so excited. Just like last week. All right. So here's what I want to try to do. Last week, I had... I can't see anything. I'm so old. I had a hard time reading the comments. So this week, I am going to try to double up. I'm going to try to do the computer and the screen and see. I'm going to try to read the comments on the computer, and that way I can talk to you at the camera there. I'm not even sure if this is going to work, but we're about to find out. All right, man. Let's see if we can pull this off. Look at, we got people joining in already. I love it. All right, here we go. Let's see what we can make happen. And let's see. Hey, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. Last week, we had the video from last week. Here's my goal. I don't even know if this is possible, but after we do this, I'm going to try to edit the video. Once it's posted, I'm going to try to edit it in such a way that I post the link to last week's video. Because what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow that video up with this video. And you know what we were talking about last week, man? We were talking about this October thing. And in all of mine, hey, Eileen, in all of my travel across the nation and work with schools and teachers, this October, October is when reality hits. And what we talked about last week was that is when the exhaustion sets in, because teachers have this realization that, oh my God, we're not even close to, Thanksgiving is over a month away, and Christmas, that feels like years away. And all the back to school, all that has worn off. And that beautiful the bulletin board you made, the everything's ripping off of that. It's tattered and worn, and reality has set in. And so this is when the exhaustion sets in. And so what we talked about last week was really coming out, getting super clear with what we want for our kids. That is the driving force. That's the fuel that lasts the entire school year, is getting super clear on what we want for our kids. Digging down deep and identifying and defining and being able to articulate the ultimate lesson that we want for our kids. If you could have anything for your kids as a result of them spending their lives with you, what would it be? And last week, what we talked about was this crazy thing, all that knowledge that we're trying to stuff into that kid's noggin. They're going to forget that stuff, right? Just like you did, just like I did. I don't remember much from, my history classes. But what I learned was that lesson that teacher wanted to instill in me and who I became because of that class. What is that for you? Because I think when we get really super clear on that's it for me. Here's the truth. I didn't sign up just to stuff knowledge into the kid's noggin. I didn't sign up, to... Well, you want to sign up? I signed up to be the most important adult of influence in that kid's life. That's why I signed up. And I think if we get clear on what we really want for our kids as a result of them spending their lives with us, that is the fuel that lasts the whole year. Because when we get tired, when that teacher tired thing, that's a whole different level of tired. I mean, there's tired, I know that, but the teacher tired, that's next level tired. And for those people that have never taught, if they haven't been in the classroom, they don't know what teacher tired is. There's the physical exhaustion, and everybody gets that. And I understand, as educators, physically it's tiring, but it's not like we're on the deck of some lobster fishing boat, where we're not out here in the Texas heat, doing roofing. That's a different kind of physical exhaustion. But because of teaching, the reason our exhaustion is another level is because it's not just a physical exhaustion, but it's the intellectual exhaustion that goes along with the physical exhaustion. Because in teaching, this profession, this is the only profession on the planet where, man, we make thousands of decisions each and every day that completely it shifts the trajectory of a kid's life. Every decision we make, thousands upon thousands of decisions every day that shifts the trajectory of a kid's life. And I'm not talking about the big decisions. I'm talking the little bitty decisions. The simple, yes, you can. Not right now, in a moment, sit down. Even those shifts the trajectory of a kid's life and the exhaustion of that pressure. Because even though we don't think about it consciously, sometimes, subconsciously, it's in there. And even more than that, it's the emotional exhaustion. that is where it's the stories it's the stories with which these kids come to class. That's the exhaustion. Those emotional stories. And listen, I know here on the Help a Teacher page, there are teachers from around the globe. And I haven't taught in your district, the odds are I haven't taught in your state or your town, in your school, but I can tell you this, in my teaching, I've taught K through 12 in my couple of decades, quarter century teaching. I can tell you this, that my fourth graders, I've had fourth graders in a small town in which I taught. These fourth graders, they knew more details about how their parents were manufacturing methamphetamine in the backyard. Like, they knew the details. That's a fourth grader. And to know that story when these comes, that's where the exhaustion happens, taking all that emotionally. I have it seventh and eighth graders in my junior high taught. These kids knew every detail of the foster care system because that's where they grow up. And they've been in the system for 10 years. This is a 13-year-old kid that has been in the foster care system for 10, and they know at this age they can look around their youth home and they know they're not going to get adopted at this age. They see what's going on, and that kid will come into class, and that story that kid would take on and be in my classroom, that kind of emotional exhaustion as an educator. Not to mention at the high school, seniors, these kids have lived like generations of experiences. And here are those heroic teachers across the nation standing before these kids, taking all that on and trying to teach and make a difference in their lives. That's where teacher tired happens. That's what, when we say teacher tired, that's what it's from. And you know what it is? Hey, Christine, you know what it is? I think for me, making the distinction and not taking things on personally, I think that was another big help for me. And and listen, teaching is a very personal thing. This is such an emotional, it should be personal. And we say don't make it personal, but how can you not? Like, you love your kids, right? That's a very personal thing. These kids have now joined your family for the rest of their lives. That's a very personal thing. Like, we always give them that lie, what we do at the beginning of the year, like, I'll be your teacher this year. That's like the biggest lie ever. Like, the truth is, I'm your teacher for the rest of our lives. That's the truth. And so it's all personal. But where I think it's important to make the distinction, and by the way, other careers don't have this. You get that, like, there's other careers that they can keep that over on the left side of the brain in that hemisphere, like very logical careers, and they're very analytic and very cerebral. This teaching thing is the other side, really emotional and oftentimes irrational, because that's what happens on the emotions. It's separating that student behavior and not taking that on emotionally, yet keeping this job really emotional. Make somehow separating that too. That's what, listen, in my job, in the classroom for me, I was good at a whole bunch of stuff. I was bad at a bunch of stuff too, but I was good at a bunch, but I felt like I was great at just a few things. Here's one of the things I know I was great at. I got to a point in my career where I didn't take the student behavior personally. Like, it just didn't affect me personally. I was personally invested in that kid because I loved that kid, but I didn't take the behavior on personally. I was able to separate that. And you know what I think? I think it was, looking back, and I just had this conversation the other day. I think what it was is learning that lesson really early in my career. And I'll tell you what happened is I was the first year teacher, right? And I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm a total mess. And I'm standing before the kids. And it's last class of the day, okay? And these are high school kids, 9 through 12. I'm sitting before the kids, and we got 10 minutes before the bell. And last class of the day, a kid, Tommy, and I'm friends with Tommy on Facebook. His dude's like in his 40s now. I hope he watches this. All right, so Tommy stands up, and he's walking at the back of the class. I'm like 22. This kid's like 17. And I'm like, hey, man, you got to sit down. The bell hasn't rung yet. And he goes, he says, I'm leaving early. I said, no, man, you can't leave early. Have a seat. The bell didn't ring yet. We leave when the bell rings. He says, no, I want to go to my locker, get my stuff so I can get to the bus on time. I said, listen, man, there's 15 minutes between when the bell rings to end school and before the buses leave. You got time. He says, I'm leaving. I says, you're not leaving. Now we get going this back and forth thing. And now the kids are really invested, right? This is super entertaining for them. And I'm screaming at this kid, and Tommy's yelling back at me. He says, I'm leaving. I said, sit down. You're not leaving. And he opens up. The kid is leaving my classroom. I'm chasing him down the hall and yelling at him. And Tommy, what this dude does, he takes his fingers and puts them in his ears. Like this. So I'm running behind him, yelling at the back of his head. He's got his fingers in his ears. And I'm thinking, I can't leave my classroom. And I run back to my classroom. And now the kids are laughing at me. And I'm feeling humiliated and embarrassed. And they're all like, now we're all leaving. And they're trying to get out the door. And finally the bell rings. And they all leave. And like, I'm standing there. I'm 22, teaching for like 8 days, and I can't believe. And so now I'm really mad. And I try to find Tommy. I'm running down the hall. I'm trying to find out where his locker is. But I'm running up in the hall looking for this kid. And I see kids see me from my class, and they're laughing at me. I run out to the buses, and the buses are leaving. That's Friday, so that's it, man. Now I'm mad. And I drive home, and I'm walking around my apartment, stomping around. I'm mad. I'm coming up with a plan on what I'm going to say to this kid on Monday morning. I'm up on Friday night, Saturday. I'm walking around all day. I'm thinking about that kid. Sunday, I'm so mad. Now I'm just boiling. I cannot wait for Monday to yell at this kid. And I get to the school. I'm waiting at the doors of the school for this kid. The buses pull up. I'm standing there waiting and I see him. Here he comes. He gets off the bus. He's talking to his friends, and he's having a conversation. He's coming closer. He doesn't see me. I'm right there at the door, and he's getting closer, talking to us. And he looks up. He sees me, and he goes, "Hey, Bowman, how's it going, man?" And he grabs my hand, like shakes it, hugs me, and says, "How was your weekend?" And I'm looking at this kid. I'm thinking, he has no idea. Like, he doesn't remember. He didn't spend his whole weekend thinking about this like I have. He has no clue what was going on. He has no idea. I said, "Hey, man, we need to talk about Friday." He goes, "Okay, what happened Friday?" I said, "What happened Friday? You got up and left class before the bell." And he goes, "I did that?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, I must have been having a bad day. I'm sorry." And like right then I got it. Like these are kids. Like, why would I take, they're ridiculous. Like, that's the job of a kid. Like, that's the right of a kid. Like, they can be ridiculous. As an adult, not so much. But as a kid, this is the time in their life, and they do dumb stuff just like you did, just like I did. And you know what? And ever since that moment, that's where things really shifted for me, where I thought, you know what, man, I gotta put myself in a position where I'm not gonna take this behavior personally because they're children. Yeah. Hey, you know what? The other thing is the other thing I did is I shifted looking at ridiculous behavior and misbehavior. I shifted that in my brain and start thinking about that the same way I think about a skill. And like, when I take that personally, if a kid was struggling in math in my classroom, if he was struggling with a mathematical concept, would I take it personally? No. If a kid was struggling in language arts or English, would I take that personally? If a kid is struggling in math, you know what I'd do? I would identify the problem. I would figure out why that kid is struggling, and then I would teach the kid, and we would solve the problem. If the kid was struggling in language arts, I would identify the problem. I would figure out why the kid is struggling. I would teach the kid, and we would find a solution to that problem. It's the same thing with behavior. In my mind, I shifted over and think about that as a skill. And when there's misbehavior and a kid's a little bit ridiculous, I figure out why. I identify that behavior. I figure out why that's happening, and we talk about it. And then that way I can teach that kid just like any other skill and make a difference in that kid's life. That's why we always say, man, like, I always say, though, kids will forget the consequence, but they will always remember the conversation. Now, when there's misbehavior, like, of course I think a kid needs consequences. I want them to see what happens when they, both good and bad, when there's amazing behavior, I want some amazing consequences. And when the behavior is less than great, I want them to feel that as well. Of course, I want to be consequences, but at the same time, what the kid is going to remember is the conversation that we have when we're talking about those consequences. Because that is what makes a difference in the lives of this kid, and that is what we all signed up for. And you know what I love? Like, here's what I love. I love that everybody walking around. This is what I think about challenging kids. Everybody walking around, everybody here in America, and everywhere you go, around the globe, everyone has a teacher that they still think about. There's a teacher still in the mind for everybody, everywhere. I love that. And that's what and you know what, it just happened. And you know what I do? I sneak up on people, and we do these quick interviews, and I take my phone and I sneak up behind them. I said, hey, tell me about your teacher. Who was the best teacher you've ever had? Who comes to mind first? Everybody has one. It's 100%. Everybody has one. I just did it earlier on Wednesday of last week. My son had a broken leg. He had a cast on. Then he went to the boot. This week he got the boot off. And there's the physician's assistant that he's been working with. And as soon as we take off the boot, I asked her name's Valerie. I said, Valerie, tell me about the best teacher you've ever had. Who was your favorite teacher? Immediately, she has a name. And not just a name, but like every detail. She talks about being in this guy's biology class. She remembers his name, remember the class. She remember the conversations that he'd had with her in a hallway talking about the potential that's inside of her. She remembered the whole thing. And what I love about you guys and all these teachers, everyone, you that help a teacher, what I love is about, there are hundreds of kids that you have right now. Hundreds. Thousands of kids, depending upon what you teach and how long you taught. Hundreds upon hundreds, possibly thousands of kids that years from now, decades from now, when someone asks them who their favorite teacher was, when someone asks them who made the difference in their life when they were growing up. Your students, when your students have a family and their children, ask your student, now the parent, who was the teacher that was there for you? Hundreds of them are going to talk. They're going to talk about you. They're going to tell that story about you. I love that. All right. Hey, man, I appreciate you guys so much. And listen, Naomi, isn't that true? Like, when we learn from our kids, like they don't tell you that stuff in college. No one told me that. Like all those education classes I took, I'm not sure I learned anything in there, all that theoretical stuff. Because I don't know about you, Naomi, in your class, but I'm not sure that's anything that's ever happened in theory has actually happened in my classroom, right? But where you really learn how to be a teacher is standing before kids. When you accept the honor and the privilege of standing before kids and working with kids, that's really where you learn to be the teacher. Yeah. And Brittany, listen, you know what? The fact that you love, that you want to be the light, see, that's it. Like that's... here's the thing, like, I don't even know what Brittany teaches, right? But it doesn't matter, because what she wants to do is she wants them to understand, like, who they're becoming and pull that out of the kid and be the one that delivers all those values in that kid so they become respectful and productive citizens. Like, does she want them to have the knowledge? Of course she wants them. But I think really what Brittany wants deep down inside, what she's talking about, is help that kid identify and pursue that passion that's within that kid, so they can go out and make a difference in the lives of everyone. And it doesn't even matter what that kid's profession is going to be, just so that they love it and they're going to be able to use that to make a difference in the lives of other people. Now, yeah, Shannon, you're amazing. You're right. That is what it's about. I love that too. All right, let me tell you what we got coming up. In the next few weeks, we'll have some conversation coming up. Here's what I think we're going to do for this next week. We are going, yes, Brittany, you teach first grade. That's the perfect place, right? Because here's what Brittany, oh, so good. Brittany, listen, this is that first grade, okay, first grade, second grade. These kids are now anchoring in the emotions that they're going to associate with school for the rest of their lives. Isn't that true? So what I love about you and what they're learning in your class is when they walk into your classroom, they feel loved, they feel connected, and that is what they're going to feel when they walk into the second grade and third grade and fourth grade, because they learned that from you. That's what instilled and made that imprint on the DNA of that kid. I love it. Yeah, Cecilia, isn't it true? Knowing the story, right? And what I was telling you guys about Tommy, and people ask like, well, what would you do different today? What would be different about today? And you know what? Today, it's really hard to answer that question. If that happened in my class? Because it wouldn't happen in my class. Because back then, I didn't know to build a relationship. I didn't know what Tommy's story was. I didn't know the story of any of the kids. No one told me that part. But so today, that would have been a whole different deal. Because it's all about reaching them before I teach them. Like, I get it. I'm going to invest a ton of time up front getting to know that kid and learning that story and embedding myself into that kid's life. It's almost as if I have to earn the right to teach that kid. And the way we earn the right to teach that kid is to get to know the kid and love the kid relentlessly. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Naomi. So you know, right? I love that. Listen, the bus driver, for lots of kids, I want to say more than you could ever imagine. For lots of kids, that bus driver is the first adult that they come in contact with in the morning. So many of these kids are not getting up to a mom smiling and kissing them on the forehead. So many of these kids are getting up, and I'm talking like third grade. No, they're not making their own breakfast. They don't have breakfast. They're coming to school for that, hopefully. And often, that bus driver is the first face and the first person they're going to connect with. That's the mom. That's their dad. That's the first person they're going to see in the morning. You know, I was visiting a school and down in Needville, Texas. This is a couple of years ago, and at a stoplight about to turn on a country road, and there's a hotel there, not like a Holiday Inn Express or at Hampton. It's like a Road Runner Inn or something like that. And I see these kids. I'm talking little kids and like waist high kids, and they're up on the balcony walking back and forth. I'm thinking, what is going on? So I pull in the parking lot. It's still dark outside, right? It's probably like 6:30 in the morning, and I'm thinking, what are all these kids doing out here? They're just by themselves, like in a hotel, going up and down the roof. And then I see the school bus pull in. And these are kids living in that hotel that run onto the school bus. And as they're running up the stairs, I pull up now and I can see, and they're in line. I'm thinking, what is taking so long? And there she is. There's a school bus driver hugging each and every one of these kids. I'm not talking like a little hug. I'm talking a full on, like full contact embrace in the morning. And I'm thinking, like, how beautiful is that? I look at these hotels. I don't even know if there's parents are even awake. There's no lights on. Like, these kids just got up out of the bed themselves, the first, second, and third graders, and get onto the bus as a child. And thank God and like, that's the heroic stuff that's happening everywhere across the nation. And the craziest thing to me is, like, no one knows. Like, no one knows about this bus driver. Here she is pulling up to a hotel with a whole bunch of first, second, third graders getting in line, smiling to get a hug from the bus driver who serves as the mom in their life. It's amazing, man. Yeah. I love it, Shannon. Yeah. Brittany, you know what? That's the thing. You know, that, look, first grade, I want kids to learn to read and write. Of course I do. But it's going to happen. That's going to come along. They're going to learn to read and write. And there's a different learning curve for some kids. It's really steep and they get it right away. Other kids, it's a long process, and that's fine too. But what I'm really interested in those early grades is kids being kind and knowing, feeling what that feels like to work hard. And yes, in first grade, you can learn determination, all of that. God, I love that they have you. Yeah. You know, I get every school I worked at, Emily, there's that story. In every school, there's a teacher. And this is the other thing, man, we don't talk about. There's a teacher in every school I've ever worked where a student wasn't just part of their school family, but a student became a part of their family at home too. Where there was a case manager that got involved and teachers got together and said, what is happening in this kid's life is completely, if this kid is going to have a chance, we need this kid full time, like 24 hours to live with us. That's how much those teachers love that kid. Like, not, and here we have teachers, all these posts I've been reading on Help a Teacher, with teachers, fighting for copy paper, and teachers, struggling to get art supplies, and teachers getting the basic stuff they need to teach. Meanwhile, not only are they figuring out how to get that in a classroom, but in addition to that, they're taking kids home to live with them, to make a family and a future for that kid. I love it. Thank God they have you. You're amazing, Emily. Right, Naomi? I know. All right. Hey, what I was going to tell you is coming up, we have, I think what I'm going to do is post some topics earlier in the week, or I should say soon, so we get ready for next Monday, and a topic that we can talk about, and you can kind of get ready for and let it marinate in your mind a little bit. And in addition to that, I've got a couple of little educational celebrities lined up that we're going to interview and do like a double Facebook Live. So we'll have our heads next to each other, and we'll do like an interview and get some of their ideas. And we'll have some giveaways. I've been securing a few things we're going to give away, and then and that way we can have more of a conversation. All right. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all you do. I appreciate you so much. And man, I'm just so honored and just humbled by the work you do, and so proud of you. And have an amazing week. I love you guys. All right, we'll see you next time.